Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel, Old School English Teacher. Today we're going to be talking about the complex sentence, so let's get started. What is a complex sentence, you ask? Well, a complex sentence is an independent clause joined to a dependent clause by a subordinating conjunction. Sounds like Greek to me. Let's break this down into smaller components for better understanding. I like to create equations. They kind of help me have a visual of what I'm trying to understand. So an independent clause plus a subordinating conjunction plus a dependent clause, that creates a complex sentence. Now let's examine each of these for better understanding. What is an independent clause? Well, you know the answer to that if you watched my video on the simple sentence. It is often a simple sentence that can stand alone and is a complete thought. For example, the work stopped. It is grammatically correct and it is complete. Now, a new concept. What is a dependent clause? Well, a dependent clause cannot stand alone. For example, when it rained is not a complete thought. If we were having a conversation and I said, when it rained, you'd be waiting for me to finish my idea, wouldn't you? Now, what is a subordinating conjunction? You know what they are. You've been using them your whole life. You just didn't call them that. A subordinating conjunction connects a dependent clause to an independent clause. For example, the work stopped when it rained. When is the subordinating conjunction? Here's a list of commonly used subordinating conjunctions. It's not complete. If you want a complete list, I would suggest you go to Google, type in subordinating conjunctions, and print out your own complete list. When I'm trying to learn a new concept, I like to create analogies, and this is the one I thought of to help me remember the structure of that complex sentence. I like to think of the independent clause as the parent. The parent has a job, has shelter, has transportation, makes decisions, so the parent is very independent. I like to think of the dependent clause as a child. The child needs to be cared for, needs rules, and is under the watchful eye of the parent. So here's my little analogy. The independent clause, i.e. the parent, helps the dependent clause, the child, create a complete thought or a complete life. So I have a couple of examples. Since Bobby moved to Tucson, Ellen has been unhappy. Now, when a subordinating conjunction initiates a sentence, then we know that this is going to be a dependent clause. And we know there's going to be a comma right here. So again, we have another example. The sentence is kicked off with a subordinating conjunction. While the teacher lectured, comma, Frank took copious notes. Okay, here are two more examples. I've put the subordinating conjunctions in the middle of the sentence, so this changes the punctuation. He practiced constantly because he wanted to make the team. When you see the subordinating conjunction in the middle of the sentence, there is no comma. And again, the swim party was canceled since the pool was contaminated. So, to review that, comma usage with a complex sentence. When the sentence begins with the subordinating conjunction, which signals that this is a dependent clause, you know you're going to need a little comma there. When the sentence begins with a dependent clause, use a comma between the dependent clause and the independent clause. And here's the second part of that rule. Do not use a comma when the sentence begins with an independent clause. And we know that this is an independent clause because there's no subordinating conjunction. It's here in the middle of the sentence, signaling that we do not need a comma. Okay, your favorite part of my YouTube videos, the student practice. So I have 8 sentences here. I would like you to create 4 complex sentences using subordinating conjunctions. Now this is going to take a little bit longer, so I would like you to press pause and I will be waiting for you when you return. Okay, so how did you do? Everybody's results are going to look a little different, and this is what I came up with. Mona cleaned the refrigerator before she went to the store. Notice that there's no comma because the subordinating conjunction is in the middle of the sentence. Before Frank was the coach, he was the trainer. Notice that there is a comma because the sentence begins with a dependent clause initiated with the subordinating conjunction before. Brant played the violin with his eyes closed. Notice there's no comma because the subordinating conjunction is in the middle of the sentence. Although Sarah didn't like fish, comma, she went to the seafood cafe. So continue working on these little stories until the pattern is so familiar you don't have to think much when you're writing your sentences. Okay, now I want you to write a story. You've done some sentence combining. Now I want you to write a story using only complex sentences. I want you to write in first person using past tense. And I have an example here for you. When I came home from work, comma, a strange car was parked in front of my house. I didn't know what to expect, so I opened the front door cautiously. As I walked into the kitchen, I heard voices coming from the backyard. Since it was dark, I couldn't see who was on the patio. A chorus of voices shouted, "Surprise!" before I began to laugh. So, notice my pattern here. When a sentence begins with a subordinating conjunction, that signals that it is a dependent clause and there will be a comma. When the subordinating conjunction is in the middle of the sentence, I don't need a comma. So, press pause, and I want you to write your 4 or 5 complex sentences that tell a story. So, how did you do with your story? I'm sure it's fabulous. If you're not happy with the results, keep practicing until you can write these complex sentences in your sleep. Remember, writing complex sentences requires a little bit more skill, a little bit more concentration, and probably a little bit more time. Okay, I have a book recommendation for you. The 12 Rules for Life, An Antidote to Chaos by Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson is a professor of psychology in Toronto University up in Canada. And he has written, I think it's kind of a quirky little book, but I love it. These are 12 Rules for Life, which he has written for young adults, specifically young men. And a couple of the rules that I think are rather charming, stand up straight and keep your room clean, which I think what he's saying is get your act together before you start criticizing other people. My favorite one is don't bother a kid while they're on their skateboard. And I like that because it's saying let kids do some things that are a little dangerous, a little risky, and leave them alone. So I highly recommend this book. I think it would boost your self-confidence, your self-esteem, and help you move forward in your life as a young adult. That's all I have today about the complex sentence, but I would like to challenge you to do something. I would like you to teach someone about the simple sentence. I would like you to teach someone about the compound sentence. I would like you to teach someone about the complex sentence, because when we're teaching we're really, really teaching ourselves, and we get that information firmly stamped into our brain. So that is my challenge, that you find a sibling, a friend, a parent, and you teach them these concepts that you've been learning. So with that, I will say goodbye, good writing, and good luck.